Welcome to InterPartyConflict, the podcast where we answer your questions so you can have the best tabletop gaming experience possible. My name is Gabe.
My name is Jeff.
And we're going to answer your questions today. But first, I have a question. Jeff, how are you doing today?
Doing all right. I didn't get the best sleep last night, but that's whatever.
Sorry to hear that.
It happens.
Did you have a good weekend? We're recording this, for our listeners, we're recording this right after, a few days after 4th of July. So
Yeah, actually the weekend was pretty good. It was pretty nice and relaxing. I had plans to go out to see some family, but that had to get put aside. But I mean, other than that, it was good. It was restful.
Okay. Yeah, pretty much same here. I've just been relaxing all weekend, pretty much. We didn't really have any plans for the actual 4th of July. Usually one of our neighbors a few houses down has like a huge fireworks display every year, and we have a perfect viewing point from our backyard, like right between these two trees. But this year, I guess the guy who buys all the fireworks was out camping, so
Gotcha.
So that didn't happen. So we walked down to the park a few blocks over and watched some fireworks from there.
I also saw that you fed Super Hands a lot of fast food recently.
Yeah, so July 5th is our dog's birthday. And in previous years, I have made him a meat cake, like basically a meatloaf, but I cover it in mashed potatoes, so it's like a cake.
Yeah.
We didn't do that this year. Instead, we took him around on a tour of fast food restaurants. So we got him a roast beef sandwich from Arby's. We got him double cheeseburger from McDonald's. We got him a slider from White Castle. We got him some nachos from Taco Bell, and I think we got him an apple pie from Popeyes because Popeyes didn't have any chicken sandwiches left. So, just kind of took him around and gave him tons of junk food instead.
Oh, goodness.
I don't think he was complaining.
No, I'm sure he wasn't. I'm sure he was very happy about it.
Yeah.
Although now you got reminding me of all the different fast foods that I'm no longer eating.
No, I'm still eating tons of fast food, so I'm eating enough for both of us, Jeff.
Okay. Good.
And the same day I did an arcade stream on my cabinet.
I caught a bit of that.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. We not a ton of people participated, but that's fine. It's I put the link in the show notes. I actually don't know how to get it onto the FriendQuest YouTube channel. Right now, it's currently just on the podcast's YouTube channel. I wasn't sure how to change that. So yeah, it's still available to go watch if anybody wants to watch it after the fact. However, I did have quite a few technical issues while it was going on. I couldn't get certain things to show up on the stream. Like I have a program that lets you browse games on. You have like a giant. It looks like it's kind of like a giant wheel that you scroll through all the games on, and it just wouldn't show up on the stream. It kept just showing the, please wait screen that I had set up. And then when I tried getting some of the Laserdisc games playing, those just wouldn't show up at all, and I couldn't figure out how. I eventually figured out the other thing, but getting the scrolling wheel to show up caused a bunch of other issues, so I eventually stopped it. I couldn't get the Laserdisc games to show up at all. So
I assume it has to do with like the video, like the resolution and things like that. Because like if the capture card is set up to display one type, if you switch to a different resolution, it might not pick it up right away.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
I've had some issues with capture cards, with my capture card in that regard. Yeah. So
hopefully I can get it sorted out for some time in the future, because it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed playing it. Once we're able to have, once you're able to come over again and such, it'd be cool to.
Yeah, I gotta get my Marble Madness high score back.
Yes, you do.
Well, it's not even they were that high of scores.
No,
so
not at all.
It's a really difficult game.
Right. I did, however, get a new record on Tapper, so I'm pretty proud of myself.
Oh yeah, I did see you. I did see you playing some Tapper.
Yeah, I would say it's probably my favorite arcade game.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so you want to go ahead and get into this episode?
Sure.
Okay. So, Jeff, I want you to imagine that you're doing just typical Jeff stuff. You're out practicing your archery.
Yeah, of course.
That's a thing you do. And
Yeah, got a little target thing out back.
yeah, there you go. And so you're out there, you knock an arrow, you fire it, and you got a few good shots in there. But one of the times you go to fire an arrow and like something distracts you and you accidentally fire just a little bit too high. And so the arrow just sails straight over the bale of hay or whatever, flies off into the woods. And, you curse yourself because, those woods of monsters and such. I mean, I guess you've got a weapon on you, but anyway.
Right, yeah.
So,
but that was my last good arrow.
There you go. So you head off into the woods in search of your lost arrow. It's your last good arrow. You don't want to waste it. And you get out there and you notice that it seems there's like a perfect straight shot into this cave that for whatever reason you've never explored. Maybe it was unearthed in a recent earthquake or something. I don't know. I don't know what kind of world building I'm trying to do here. So you figure, what the heck? Let me just hop in this cave, see where my arrow went, and then that'll be that. However, you get inside this cave and you realize there's more in here than you expected. When you get in through the opening, you start to see the glint of gold and silver and green gems and red gems and purple gems and so on. And you realize that there is something very special in this cave. And you know what that is, Jeff?
What is it?
Inside this cave is the Dragon's Hoard. Because I forgot to mention, there used to be a dragon that lived here.
Oh, of course.
Duh. That's just to be assumed at this point. So
that's my neighbor.
Right. You're actually, you just went into your neighbor's cellar.
Right.
Your neighbor's over there. Oh, hey, Jeff. Oh, hey, Jeff. I'm just reorganizing my stuff.
Yeah.
Is this your arrow?
Oh, thank goodness I have a really high AC. Otherwise, that would have hurt.
Right. So anyway, today's magic item is the Fletcher's Stone, submitted by Scott H. via email. And the Fletcher Stone is an uncommon. I would say he put uncommon to rare. I would say that it itself is uncommon, but then there's these other things that add to it that I would say are probably rare. Now, this specialized whetstone is grooved to perfectly hone arrowheads. It does not work when edging any other blade. The user can hone arrows to increase damage to foes when struck by the razor-sharp arrows. The bottom of the stone has a socket. When upon closer inspection, the user finds there is space for an elemental gem. When the user reaches high enough level to use or find an elemental gem, effects of the gem will be transferred into the arrows honed when inserted into the space on the whetstone. So the first part of the mechanics is that when the user is level 1 through 4, honing arrows adds +2 to the damage. From levels 5 to 10 is +4 to damage, 11 to 16 is +8, and 17 to 20 is +10. So you get a pretty hefty damage bonus just from sharpening your arrowheads using the stone. And then there's one more part of that. Additionally, if you crit with a honed arrow, the target must make a Constitution saving throw, DC 10 plus the damage modifier, so 12, 14, 18, or 20, or suffer 1d4 bleeding damage over 2 rounds. The stone can only hone 20 arrows per day and bestow elemental effects on 5 arrows per week. So this next part is you don't get a ton of these per week or whatever. You don't get these very often. But if you have a blue sapphire, you bestow a gust of wind spell onto the arrow as well. If you have a yellow diamond, a shatter spell, a red corundum, fireball spell, and an emerald, a sleet storm spell. So it says if the spell cast from an arrow is above the PC's spellcasting ability, the PC must make a DC 12 plus spell level wisdom save or have the spell fail. And then I think there's also an additional rule here. You can put multiple effects on an arrow at DM's discretion. So basically, if you have one of these elemental gems, you can put it into the whetstone, and then when you give your arrows that bonus to damage, you also give them, for example, a fireball spell. So you can shoot an arrow and blow up your target at the same time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's definitely pretty powerful. I mean, it's pretty limited, only 5 arrows per week or 20 arrows per day with the damage bonus. I don't know. I think it's cool. I think maybe some of the mechanics need a little bit of cleaning up. It's not very often that a magic item will scale specifically with level.
Right. Or even give you a +10 at a point, and like
+10 is a pretty big deal, yeah.
Yeah, especially at 20 arrows, and at that level you can fire several in a round.
Yeah.
So, but I do like that it adds some more like utility and stuff to, so if somebody's like playing a fighter that is specifically a bow user.
Sure.
I know like there is I think it's through fighter, Arcane Archer.
It's fighter, yeah.
But like at least in 5th edition, I know the Arcane Archer, like it has plenty of utility, but like it's like a set list of things. You're not like putting a spell onto you're not putting like a wizard spell onto an arrow.
Sure.
You're using one of the Arcane Archer maneuvers that you've chosen from a short list.
Yeah.
So like something like this is nice if a player was looking for more of a putting a spell on my arrow kind of a deal, like you can give them something like this. That way they get more utility out of it. You might give them more options, not just the 4 spells listed, but maybe, they could try out different gems, and you might say like, oh, okay, you found this gem and you carve it, you had a jeweler carve it down so it'll fit into the thing, and then you put it in there, and it's actually a light spell, and so now you can shoot your arrow and it'll make a point of light where it lands.
Okay. Yeah, I really like this as a general mechanic for if you wanted to, you can apply certain, whatever spells the DM allows if you find the right elemental gem. And then I think that could be kind of a little side quest in and of itself, looking for these specific types of gems that will give you specific spells. I think that's really cool.
Right. It gives an option. It gives a player an option for what they want to do with their downtime.
Yes.
So like when you're going into a town and you're waiting for the quest to start, you got to like wait for, well, the quest doesn't actually begin until day 3 of when they get into town. So what are you guys doing for the first 2 days? And like the archer will be like, well, I'm going to go to the nearby jewelers and see what I can find, Yeah.
Yeah. I think I would maybe cut the damage bonuses in half.
Sure.
Because that +10, I know it is at high levels, but that +10 is pretty hefty. +5 is pretty hefty too. But
yeah. And I mean, we're talking 5th edition numbers, of course, but
correct.
So, but I mean, yeah, I think that'd be a safe bet.
Yeah. Overall, I think this is a really neat item. I think it's definitely something that doesn't get done very much. You don't really see very many things that enhance arrows nowadays. So
yeah, not too often.
Yeah, and I really like the spell mechanic as well. So yeah, good job, Scott H. I think that's a really neat item.
Yeah.
So that'll do it for the Dragon's Hoard today. Once again, that was the Fletcher Stone by Scott H. via email. Jeff, if anybody else wanted to submit magic items for the Dragon's Hoard, or if they wanted to submit questions for us to discuss, or stories for the funeral pyre or retirement village, how would they do so?
They could send us an email at interpartyconflict@gmail.com or join us on our Interparty Discord at bit.ly/interpartydiscord.
That's correct. And before we go any further, we have a giveaway to give away today. As usual, we're giving away a copy of Unearthed Tips and Tricks Volume 1, courtesy of Crit Academy. It's a great supplement that I helped them write. It's a collection of 25 character concepts, 25 encounter concepts, monster variants, magic items, player tips, DM tips, all from the Crit Academy podcast. It's full of great stuff. There's tons and tons of content in there. And so we're giving away a free copy of it today. So, Jeff, who is our winner of this great supplement today?
Today's winner is Joseph G.
Whoa, winner. Gobble, gobble, gobble. Yes, congratulations, Joseph G. You should be getting that in your email pretty soon. And be sure to leave Crit Academy a review, whether you get it through, I think it either comes through DM's Guild or Drive-Thru-RPG. I don't recall. Whichever one you get it through, be sure to leave them a review so that more people will see their product. If you have anything negative to say about it, they can work on it in the future, but hopefully your review will be positive. And also because I hope I will be helping them make future Unearthed Tips and Tricks books as well. If you have any specific criticisms, you can also send some of those my way as well. So, and a big thank you to Crit Academy for facilitating this. Jeff, if anybody else wanted to be like Joseph G and they wanted to win a free copy of this great supplement, how would they enter the drawing?
They can email us at interpartyconflict@gmail.com with Unearthed Tips and Tricks in the subject line.
That's correct. All right. And then we have an announcement. We have a new patron today. Wah, wah, wah. Alistar the Minotaur has become a red tier patron. So thank you so much, Alistar. You're awesome.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, he's sent in a lot of stuff too.
He has. He's been pretty active for a while.
Yeah.
So yeah, big thank you to him. For anybody who's not familiar with Patreon is an online platform. You can pledge to donate a certain amount of money per month to the creator of your choice. And we have our own Patreon campaign at patreon.com/InterPartyConflict. If you head over there, you can see that we've got a few different tiers. We've got on the lowest tier, we've got outtakes, we've got fantasy fiction that I've written. I think pretty soon I'm going to be getting out my next audio fiction as well. So keep an eye out for that. On the next tier up, we've got a monthly bonus podcast that we just a week or two ago we put out last month. So I think pretty soon we're going to try to get out this month's as well. And then on the top tier, we've got a monthly Roll20 game. So hopefully Alistar will be able to join us for that. And I think we've got some cool stuff on there. So if listeners, you want to help out the show and get some cool stuff in return, you can head over to patreon.com/interpartyconflict. You can check out the rewards, see if anything appeals to you, and, help out the show and get some cool stuff. So a huge thank you to everybody who has contributed to us now and in the past. Big thank you to Alistar. We really appreciate you joining. Just for everybody out there that has contributed, we understand that some tough times right now. It may be a little bit harder to justify donating money to a free podcast, but hey, hopefully you are interested enough in the show, and hopefully it's worthwhile if and when you do so. So, and if you don't want to, hey, no problem. The show's still always going to be free, so go ahead and keep on listening, I guess.
Yep, we'll still be here.
Yeah. And then one more thing, check out the other podcasts on the Crit Nation Fellowship. Check out Crit Academy at critacademy.com. They're a podcast where the hosts create new and reusable content for players and DMs alike. Next up, check out Brute Force and Ignorance. They are an actual play podcast on the network as well. And then check out D&D Character Lab. They're not making episodes anymore, but Garen and Dan made characters and pitted them against each other to debate whose were better. Enough with all that. Let's get into some questions.
All right, our first question comes from Cuban Soda on Reddit. I'm sure Gabe would like to at least try that.
I would like to try Cuban Soda.
Yeah. And they ask, do merchants in your game charge the PC's tax?
Yeah. So, in the book, they've got this particular product costs this much. This particular service costs this much. So I guess this question is, do you, or has anybody you've played with maybe ever additionally charged tax to players that purchase items in game? If they don't, would it benefit the game to do so? I guess maybe I'm reading that part into the question, but
right. It's like, I feel like it could be an interesting thing. Like it's more of like a world building sort of thing. Yes. I feel like where like maybe they are being taxed, like, maybe the party is mostly orcs or half orcs or something, and it could be a racist merchant, and they are charging them more or something like that, or they just don't like adventurers. They no good adventurers.
Yeah,
that sort of thing. So like it could add a little bit of world building in there and kind of sow a little bit of conflict in there just to make things interesting.
Sure. I think I've never been in a game where they charge tax. In fact, I will probably use this mostly to talk about how I feel about variable prices in general in games. But sure, I think that if you are going to use explicitly tax, it should be for story purposes. It should either be, I'm really trying to express how like totalitarian the government is. They tax everything that you do, even the stuff that's in the book. It's 5 gold. Here you pay 15 gold because for the freedom of living in this, whatever. If you're trying to establish something story-wise from it, like you were saying, Jeff, this merchant is racist against characters of whatever your character's race is, or your character is, or the merchant is prejudiced against adventurers. That could be a good way to get that across by arbitrarily increasing the price of items. Now, as far as like, would I ever do it? If I wasn't doing it for a story reason, I definitely would not. I see no reason to also charge tax. If a player is really interested in the lore of why there isn't tax, just assume that the tax is part of what you're paying. Like, I don't know, for every gold piece, the vendor only gets 9 silver and 1 silver goes to the king or something.
Yeah, it's taxed on the merchant side.
Yeah. But I will, to beef up this question a little bit, I will say that I've never really been a fan of like haggling in D&D games. I know that some groups do, and I just feel like the prices that are in the book, if you're using the just regular mundane goods in the player's handbook, if you're playing 3rd edition or Pathfinder where you've got prices for all of the magic items and X item costs Y 1,000 gold, I personally don't see a worthwhile value in making that variable, generally speaking, because I think that most of the time the prices are there for balance purposes rather than for anything in world. I've talked about how I think it makes no sense for characters to be carrying around tens of thousands of gold. It doesn't make sense for someone to hand over a king's ransom for a marginal increase in their sword accuracy.
Right.
It just feels weird to me in and out of game.
Yeah, it's a bit odd. Like, it always brings up the questions of like how the economies work and stuff.
I'll interject one thing. After we did have an episode a few months ago about economy, and I talked about exactly this. I talked about how I don't think it makes sense for someone to be willing to pay so much for like a 5% increase in their accuracy. And one of our listeners, I am embarrassed because I don't remember who it was, but one of our listeners very astutely pointed out, if you're like a professional musician, you will pay thousands of dollars for something that 99% of people will never be able to tell the difference.
Right.
Because you can tell the difference.
Yeah, that is definitely a good point. Cause like, think of our microphones.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure people appreciate the sound quality that we have, but it's not something that they actively notice.
Yeah.
But like if we were to say like the microphones we got were like, like 100 or so, like, but there are microphones that, there are shows that I watch and listen to that I use microphones that are like $1,000.
Yeah.
And while I can tell the difference, and like but like most of the time when I'm watching and listening, I'm not thinking about the sound quality. I'm just hearing their voices.
Yeah. If you're thinking about it, that means something's wrong.
Right. And so like, I'm just hearing their voices. So like, I can't, unless I'm actively listening for it and like comparing the differences, like I'm not going to notice the difference between this $100 microphone and this $1,000 microphone.
Yeah.
And so like that is sort of like the difference between a +1 weapon and a +2 weapon,
Sure,
it's like a 5% difference doesn't seem big, but like it's pretty big.
Yeah. So I guess that's kind of a sidebar on a sidebar.
Sure.
But I just want to say that I do understand there could be an in-universe justification for paying a ridiculous amount of money for, for a marginal increase in accuracy or whatever. But generally speaking, it's just a conceit that the players have. Okay, I have to spend this much money in order to gain this much power mechanically. So I think that it always sounds weird to me when I'm listening to an actual play podcast or I'm reading someone's story they've put on the internet where they're talking about how they haggled for magic items. Like, oh yeah, the DM let us pay 80% for these magic items instead of 100%. Because number one, like, okay, wow, the DM gave you a huge boost in your power by letting you have that for less power currency than
Right.
is in the book. Alternately, I've heard of people who are like, yeah, we were in a hostile land, so magic items cost us 50% more. And I'm like, holy crap, why would you spend 50% more of your, relatively finite mechanical currency on something that if you had just bought it back in town or whatever, you would have been able to buy, 50% more magic items or whatever. I know I'm overthinking it, but it's just weird to me when people mess with the economy of D&D because it's such a mechanical thing, and it makes even less sense to me to think of it being so in universe that, instead of paying me a king's ransom, I'll give it to you for a queen's ransom, it's just weird to me. So, so I wouldn't ever really do that. Maybe on mundane goods because the prices are so much lower.
Sure.
Maybe depending on the situation, but I still probably would only make it story based.
Right. Yeah. I was gonna say I more and more favor things like magic items and stuff not to be something that you just buy in a store, but something that is found in a dungeon, or maybe it is something that you find something that it could be turned into a magical item, and then you pay like a service fee to get it made or something. But that's not instead of giving your players 1,000 gold, you give them this item, this unique item that they can then take back into town and have it turned into a magical item.
Sure.
It's change the currency of gold into instead just tokens that can be turned into magical items.
Yeah. Yeah, that can work. As long as you're the dungeon master and you can kind of dictate what can get spent on what.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a perfectly acceptable way to do it.
Yeah.
So to answer the question, no, merchants in my game don't charge tax. I don't think I ever would unless it was a story reason. I think that's really in my opinion, the only justifiable way to do that.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's the only real good reason is if you're doing it to explain some sort of element to the story.
Sure.
Okay, our next question comes from Deadly Squid 193 on Reddit, and they ask,
I love people's usernames.
Right, Can you play as a vampire in D&D?
Yeah, so fairly simple question. Player shows up and wants to play a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do? I've shared a tale in previous episodes. I can briefly cover it here in case anybody is listening and has not heard the story yet, but also I know we have some long-term listeners, so I don't want to keep recounting the same story over and over again. I had a player who really wanted to play a vampire back in 3rd edition D&D, where playing a vampire meant being, 8 or 10 levels higher than everybody else. And he didn't have a good reason why. He didn't have a good reason why he couldn't just play like a human, but then flavor them as a vampire. I even gave him that as an option. And he just didn't understand why it wouldn't work. And then I ended up giving him some other option that he was okay with, and then he ended up doing absolutely nothing with it. So it wasn't that he had a cool role-playing idea in mind. He just liked the idea of being a vampire and didn't actually know how to turn that into gameplay.
Right. Which, sometimes you just want to be the cool thing.
Yeah. I guess I can understand that. We had an episode just a few episodes ago about rare races and such. And so, there can be good effects. There can be bad effects with being like the weird, the unique character option or whatever.
Yeah, Gabe, I want to be the robot or the turtle. And
let me work with you to see how we can make that fit. I will resist my knee-jerk reaction of just saying no. So vampires in D&D 5th edition, I'm pretty sure is the basis for this question. Because in previous editions, it was definitely possible. There was a template you would apply to your character, but again, it would apply like a several level higher effective level for your character.
Yeah, I think one of the things I think you can do in 3rd edition is in Savage Species they had there were the templates, but then there were also I think Savage Species had, at least for a select few, monsters.
Correct.
Whereas monsters as characters, and instead of I can't remember the exact numbers. So like an illithid or something, I think it's like a plus 12 level adjustment or something ridiculous. Instead of starting off as a level 13 character, it is basically turning the illithid monster into a class of its own. So like you start off as a level 1 illithid, you only have like, you can't use stun, like you can't use their like stunning blast or whatever.
Yeah.
Like they might have, they might have like a low level spell that they can do once per day or something, you know, and then it'll progress. Eventually you become a full illithid as far as the stat block goes. But until then you're kind of going up by level.
Sure. And yeah, I think that that was a really cool way to do it. To answer the question, in the, basically the answer is no. I'll put that out right there. A no with a but. The long answer is yes with an and. So in the 5th edition Monster Manual, the vampire has a little like sidebar that talks about if a character gets turned into a vampire spawn, because there is, a vampire can create spawn. That's kind of a big part of being a vampire. It talks about, it uses the vampire spawn stats, which are a couple pages later in the Monster Manual. The thing about it though is that it kind of stresses that it's not really fit to be, maybe it doesn't stress that, but to me personally, it always seems like a vampire spawn isn't really fit to be a PC. At that point, it's kind of encouraged, maybe assumed that if a character does get turned into a vampire spawn and not killed, then they're an NPC for now. The player doesn't keep on playing them. And then there is the possibility of turning them back at a later time. So you can try and do something like that, but that's a vampire spawn. That's not a vampire, because there is a big difference. Vampire spawn are lacking a lot of the stuff that makes a vampire really, really cool. If you want to play a vampire, you probably want, the bat form and, the ability to control people and the ability to make further spawn is probably something you want.
Right.
So in the core rules, there isn't really anything beyond just, well, you can become a vampire spawn. However, there is a supplement that we've mentioned on a couple different episodes. I actually heard about this when Crit Academy covered it, but there's a supplement on DM's Guild, and it's called Monstrous Races by Tyler Kamstra. I will sing the praises of this supplement all the time.
Yeah, it's great.
Such a good supplement. So what it is basically, it's like, if it's not every monster in the Monster Manual, it's most of them.
I'm pretty sure it's almost all. It's got to be almost all of them, because there were some in there that were just like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. I guess that's what that would be.
I assumed it was all of them, but then I also assumed that about the Called Shots supplement, and I was looking through that recently, and I realized it doesn't have every monster; it just has most of them. Whatever the case, what this supplement is it's basically saying, if you want to make a player character that is any of these monsters, here is a way to do it. However, it does make it clear, number one, these aren't guaranteed to be balanced. Some of them might be stronger than others, but they are close to being balanced, usually. A lot of the abilities that the monsters have been toned down somewhat. Yeah. And I think when they were making this, each monster kind of had like a point value for each of their abilities that they would use to try and make them as balanced as possible. But just to be clear, for reasons I'll get to in a minute, it's still not necessarily going to be a good idea to make a character one of these in a group of regular characters.
Right.
So if you were to use this supplement, there are rules in here. There is a template that you can apply to a player character to make them a vampire. But, there are specific notes in the book about why vampires in particular are going to be very powerful.
There's a bunch of traits in this book, because they've made like different traits to go with the different monster races, and one of the traits is no hands.
Okay.
So like if you wanted to be a monster that was like a monster that just doesn't have any hands, like sure. There's a trait listed in that book.
Yeah.
Or rather in that supplement, that it's like, this character will have no hands and cannot manipulate like tools and weapons.
Yeah.
So like I think like I just remember seeing like one of like the dinosaurs or something.
No, it's pretty good. I imagine a beholder would be like that.
Sure.
Because they're just a mouth and eyes.
All right. Yeah. So like, they can cast, cantrips out of their eyes or whatever, but no, they're not going to be able to wield a sword.
Right. So here's the thing though. If someone wants to be a vampire in your game, I'm all for saying yes in most cases. However, this is a particular one that I don't think that the player is, this is me editorializing here. I don't think that the player is quite realizing what they're asking.
Mm-hmm.
If someone wants to play a lizard folk in a group of humans, that's one thing. If someone wants to play, like an extinct race or a race that is explicitly very rare or whatever, that's one thing. You'll get some weird looks. It might cause some interesting role play. Fine, whatever. But a vampire isn't just interesting role play. It's not just weird looks. Vampires have very specific weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
Not the least of which being they are killed by sunlight.
Right. That's a pretty big one.
If you want to play a vampire in a group of non-vampires, what you are saying is, you're not just asking, can I play this cool race? You're saying, can I play a race that forces the entire rest of the group to operate on my timeline? Because we're not going on adventures during the day. If we are, I'm not going to be there. So unless you guys are jerks, you're going to wait until I'm able to go with you.
Right.
That's kind of what you're saying.
And I mean, sure, there's going to be situations where you can't really help the fact that you're going to be exposed to sunlight. So you're telling everybody else to protect you at all costs when sunlight comes up.
Yeah.
Like, you're trapped in a dungeon somewhere and you don't know what time it is. And you're like, well, we got to get out of this dungeon because of poisonous gases or something. Like, some reason why you have to escape the dungeon, and oh wait, there's sunlight out there. Like, now you're going to ask all of the other players to like protect you from the sun or something. I don't know.
Sure.
It's just going to overcomplicate things.
Also, your character's got to drink blood.
Yeah, that's another big one.
So like, you're saying to the group, hey, I'm going to need to murder some people every now and then. Y'all are cool with that, right?
Right.
And I mean, maybe they are, but it's not just y'all are cool with it. It's y'all are cool with covering up for me and keeping the entire town from burning down our headquarters, right? And then when you aren't suffering from these debilitating weaknesses that will most definitely affect the rest of the party, you're incredibly powerful. So what you are again saying to the party is, hey, you're all going to have to keep me alive sometimes. You're going to have to cover for me sometimes. Also, when I'm at my peak, I'm going to be wrecking shop and you're just going to sit back and watch me be awesome.
Right.
Is that cool with you guys? You want to just sit back and watch me be awesome and then do my dirty work when I'm asleep?
Right, yeah.
It's just being a vampire specifically. You are asking so many things of the rest of the party that, in my opinion, it's very, this is a weird term to use, but it's very selfish to want to be a vampire. Unless the whole party's vampires. In which case, hey, have at it. Everybody have fun.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
It's just like there are so many hidden requests in that question of can I play a vampire that show an utter disregard for the game. Because, hey, maybe the DM wasn't planning on playing a game that is entirely at night and has all of the NPCs investigating these murders all the time. It shoehorns the DM into running a specific type of game. It shoehorns the rest of the party into specific roles that they may or may not be interested in.
Yeah.
It's just, the moment somebody asks, can I be a vampire? I immediately start judging them. And I hate it, but I can't help it because whether they mean it or not, there's so much that I feel I need to unpack from that question. I don't know. Again, if that is the type of campaign you're running, if the other group, the rest of the group is also doing similar things, if the rest of the group is happy with the idea, if someone in the group were to say, one of us needs to be a vampire, who wants to be a vampire? Awesome. Go for it. Have the time of your life.
Yeah, you guys want to start a Monster Mash, themed party.
Right. I mean, I would be down for that, Jeff. I'm being perfectly
right.
honest.
One of us is a flesh golem.
Right.
One of us is a werewolf.
You don't even need a mummy. You just need a bag of beans.
Right. Yep. You get the whole layer with it too.
Yes. For anybody who isn't familiar with that item, go look up the bag of beans in the 5th edition.
Bag of beans.
Or 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide. So I just think that if it is an unsolicited request to play a vampire, the answer should always be no. Just personally, that's my opinion. It should always be no until you've had a long talk with the player about why they want to play a vampire, and then involve the rest of the group, see what the rest of the group thinks. Go from there, I guess.
Yeah.
You can't just have one person be a vampire and then expect the rest of the campaign to just be a regular campaign. It just doesn't work.
Right.
Sorry, because I've dealt with this personally, I have a strong opinion on playing as a vampire.
Yeah.
Like if I had let that player be not necessarily a vampire, because again, there are so much baggage that comes with being a vampire, but I let him be a changeling. And if I had let him be a changeling and he like knocked all of our socks off with his role playing, okay, cool. I made the right choice in letting him, giving him an outlet for this creativity that he has. But he just played him like any other character. And he had complained about how humans were too boring. That's why he couldn't play a human. And it's like, dude, your character is boring. It's not. The problem isn't that the race is boring. It's that your character is boring. So again, one of the things that I would start judging somebody for if they ask to be a vampire is like, oh, they're just gonna sit back and expect all of the intrigue and, mystery and romance to just waft around them.
That's Gabe, the vampire player hunter.
Yep, that's me. If I got a reputation for not liking vampires in the same way that I quote unquote don't like Warforged, I would be okay with that. I would be okay with that kind of a reputation.
All right. Our next question comes from Master Maskovich on Reddit. And they ask, roles within a party, what are your thoughts? Should every party have a dedicated tank and healer?
Yeah, this is a much more complex question that doesn't have a clear-cut opinionated answer from me.
Right.
I think that it's a good idea. A good DM can compensate for not having those. However, that does put a lot of work on the DM to do so.
Right. Yeah. The way that encounters are built in D&D, it is kind of important to have at least some healing and somebody who can take damage,
Sure.
It's not it's not necessarily spelled out specifically in like in the book. I don't know. Does the player's handbook talk about a team composition?
Oh boy.
I don't even know.
I don't think it does. I could be wrong. If so, it's not much attention is paid to it. Maybe a little bit,
right?
But I don't think so. I could be wrong, but I don't think so.
Yeah. So as somebody who's played video games where these sort of roles do pop up a lot, I tend to try and make characters based around this sort of composition where if I'm joining a party of players and I see that there isn't a dedicated healer, I'm going to try and fit that role. But that's because I've played the game plenty. I'm not going to be mad to be forced into a role because I can find a way to make fun with it.
Sure.
But is it something that's absolutely needed? Not always. Not always.
But some extra work is going to have to be done to make up for that. Whether it's on the side of the players, on the side of the DM, or both.
Yeah. Dedicated, maybe not. Maybe if everybody had some form of healing.
Sure.
That could make up for there not being a cleric of the of the life domain or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody's got somebody has the the medicine skill and or somebody's got like a cantrip or something, or maybe somebody else like uses their gold on like scrolls and potions and things like that. There's ways to work around it, but like you said, it does involve more work than just creating a character that is specifically for healing or specifically for taking damage.
Yeah. So like, I mean, if you have a surplus of potions, that can, in a pinch, that can take the place of having a dedicated healer. But where are you getting all those potions from? The DM has to either be giving you a lot of them or giving you enough money that you can keep spending money to buy more. Yeah. So, that is an easy way to do it. There's still some times where it's not going to quite be the same thing. But yeah, like I said, something is going to have to be done. I think that a tank, I would say it's easier to set up a group of encounters around not having a tank than it is to set up a group of encounters around not having a healer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because not having a healer, you've got to take breaks to rest to get hit points back. Because, if damage is being dealt, someone's got to mitigate that damage somehow. With a tank, you can build encounters that just maybe aren't melee based. You can build encounters that are more about small amounts of damage and maybe debuffs and such.
Yeah.
So, think of it like if you had a group that didn't have any ranged combat. How would a game be different if none of the party members had any ranged combat? You'd have to work a bit harder to get closer to the enemy. If you didn't have any melee combat, if you only had ranged combat, similarly, a single monster that is right in your face is going to be so much deadlier than they would otherwise. So encounters are going to need to be set up around that, in that you're not going to throw, an appropriately leveled melee monster at the party of only ranged, because whoever it gets into melee with is going to be screwed.
Right.
So I don't know. It's possible. You don't have to have them. However, it's popular for a reason. It's encouraged for a reason.
Yeah.
So not really much else to say. Pretty simple answer, I think.
Yeah.
So I think that'll do it for our regular questions for today. We do still have our social media questions. Our last social media question was, what is your character's favorite food? I know we had a question a few weeks ago that was like, have you ever had any fantasy food in real life? This isn't in real life. This is in game. What is your character's favorite food? Do you recall if you had an answer, Jeff?
I think it was usually play Warforged so they don't eat.
Sure. And I think I said I think I had a character that really liked. We had spiced beef in one campaign, and I really liked that. There was another campaign I played in where we had braised eel was like the specialty in the town that we lived in. So that's what he ate.
I mean, I guess I haven't had much eel. I know I've had some sushi that had eel on it, and I enjoy that.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I've never had it myself, but so over on Facebook, the photo that I put along with this question was of a football player eating a big, I think it's a turkey leg or chicken leg or something. And so the first comment, Matt R says, I want some chicken now. So yeah. Justin H says, Brick loves to remove the fingers of his enemies, then smoke and season them.
Okay.
He always offers them to his allies, insisting that they are finger licking good.
Great.
That's Justin for you.
Yeah.
Brandon B says, orc rinds. Ba-doom.
Oh, goodness.
Jake F.
My brain filled in pork rinds. And
orc rinds.
Oh, nope, I got it.
Jake F. says, Sondman likes cheap plum brandy and pickled tomatoes. The first actual response. That's all we got. That's all we got on Facebook. We only got one on Reddit. Alstar the Minotaur, our new patron, says, oddly enough, considering my group's affinity for food, our characters' food preferences are rarely mentioned. And that's actually kind of why I asked the question. I figured most players don't have a favorite food for their character.
Right.
So it's something to think about.
But I mean, everybody's got a favorite food.
Yeah, everybody should. So next time you play, try and come up with what your character's favorite food is. Then Alistar goes on to say, I played a merfolk that liked calamari, but that's about the extent of it. That makes sense. If it was like they really liked fried chicken or something, that'd be a little bizarre. Calamari makes more sense, I think. Over on Twitter, we got a few. Yodelehihu says, my character eats only to sustain himself. I've made protein shakes a thing, and that's all he drinks. What truly fuels him is getting vengeance upon the demon that killed his son. I'm not playing...
Favorite food is vengeance.
Yep. And they said, I'm not clever with stories. I'm playing Thomas Wayne as Batman. My creativity is used up as a DM. Well, hey, if it tastes good,
What's your favorite food? Vengeance.
Philippe B says, my first character was from Kryn. That is the world that Dragonlance is based in. Anyways, favorite food is Otik's spiced potatoes, served at the Inn of the Last Home. Never made them in real life, but I may try one of the 1,000 recipes online now, finally.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Anything with potatoes, really. I like it.
Yeah, potatoes are hard to mess up, I think.
Yep.
Quallywood Squares says, it's been well established that Tony, my half-elf bard, loves Eggs Benedict. They are particularly fond of an all-you-can-eat Benny buffet whenever available, so they can eat for hollandaise. I think that's a joke. So they can eat for days, eat for hollandaise.
Right, yeah, that's
okay.
yep.
That took me a second there. And Seawood Scribe says, well, since I'm usually the DM, party members. Tasty, crunchy party members with a side of commoner fries and chocolate mousse and or horse for dessert. So that's everybody on Twitter. Over on Discord, Floofy Shoob says wintergreen mints and root beer. And then
root beer.
Dustin says tea and caffeinated biscuits. I can vouch for that. I'm pretty sure he's talking about his character from our Roll20 game.
Caffeinated biscuits?
He drinks tea quite a bit and launches tea and biscuits at enemies. And he shoots sugar, actually. Shoots sugar.
Oh, right. Yeah, the
cubes
packets of sugar.
Yeah. The Beverage Tea says, speaking of which, the Beverage Tea, the character that I'm playing in the Crit Academy play-by-post is based on Zhu Baji from The Journey to the West. I probably screwed that up. Traditionally, his character is known as being attached to all sensory pleasures in this Buddhist classic to the point that a person called Zhu Baji in China today is considered an uncouth and unenlightened buffoon. He is gluttonous to no end, but he doesn't take time to enjoy what he puts into his mouth. Garbage food and fine cuisine both go in en masse for the sake of eating. So, Pewter the Porky Pious Priest, a beardless dwarven cleric of Helm, has food as his favorite food. That's pretty good. Stiltskin Koopo 84 says, I once had an Adventurers League character built to parody Queen Aquen from Final Fantasy IX. So yeah, my gourmand just wanted food in general. I used the entertainer background and chef's tools. We had the party healing flavored, quote unquote, flavored as the enjoyment of the meal. I used a trident, or fork, for piercing damage, a dagger, chef's knife, for slashing damage, and an oversized spoon as a small shield. And I have to say, that's pretty awesome. Not even the inspiration aside. I like the inspiration of the Final Fantasy character, but just using a fork, a knife, and a giant spoon. I think that's great.
And I'm picturing using a giant ladle as a buckler or something, where it's the arm of the ladle goes down your arm, and then the actual spoon part at the end is on your fist, and you're blocking attacks with it.
That's pretty good, actually. Yeah. And then just one more. Autumn Wind says, I haven't thought on it much, but my Dragonborn paladin Sasha loved the meat we bought from some locals in the jungles of Chult. The rest of the party threw theirs out after suspicion grew that the meat was from humans. So, yeah. I think last week we talked about in the Funeral Pyre segment, I talked about Chris's character.
Dang.
And our other friend Melissa's character, one of them killed each other. I think Melissa's character similarly went to Chult and tried some meat and loved it so much she opened up a restaurant specifically serving that meat, and the meat was humanoid.
Oh, goodness.
So, yeah. Yeah, so some good responses there, I think. So that'll do it for last week's social media question. Our next social media question is, what film or TV show do you think best encompasses the sword and sorcery genre? So we've talked about if you could make an RPG into a movie, or have you seen, I think we asked, like, have you seen any of the D&D branded movies or whatever?
Right. Or, have you made a character or based on a character in a movie or something like that?
But this one is there a film or a TV show that you watch it and you're like, that's what I think of when I think of sword and sorcery fantasy?
That's tricky, actually.
Yeah, I thought it would be. I thought, because there's some good stuff out there.
Yeah, for sure.
And of course, everybody's going to have different interpretations of sword and sorcery and such.
Yeah, and I'm sure you could find like some elements from one movie and another that work well, but like, anything as a whole, hard to say. Because like you could talk about like, you can make comparisons to like wizards and D&D to like the wizards in Harry Potter. Like there's the different like classes and stuff. You know, like I was like they have this transmography or whatever. So there's some similarities there that can be good. But other than that, it's not very like some of the magical beasts might be similar or something. But
sure.
So I don't nothing in mind, but I'll give it some thought.
Yeah. One that comes to mind for me, I don't think it's not a perfect representation of it, but it is one of the things that I definitely think of is the movie Willow.
Oh yeah, sure.
I really like the supernatural stuff it does. I like the the down to earth stuff that it does. I think it is a very, very fun sword and sorcery experience. And like, I would be totally down for a D&D game based on Willow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm interested in seeing what some of our listeners have to say about that. I think there's some great movies out there, and I'd love to hear about them.
Yeah.
All right, that'll do it for our questions for today. But before we close out, let's wind down a little bit. Let's take a deep breath. Let's relax. Let's remember those who have come before us and made the world a better place by their sacrifice as we toss another log onto the funeral pyre. Today's funeral pyre story was submitted by Gwendol Gray on Reddit, and they said, "This sad one was my own boy. He was young and optimistic, a warlock who had made a pact with the DM himself because he wanted to be a hero." Which I just want to say, that's awesome.
Yeah,
having the DM
the
be your
patron is the actual DM.
Right. I think we mentioned on a previous episode, but I would love a game where the player was the patron. I think that could be an interesting thing to explore. Anyway.
Yeah, the person playing the character is the patron.
Yeah. The party loved and protected him. Instead of standing to fight the flaming skulls, we were in bad shape, but they were weak. A few party members chose to flee, so my boy did the same. After multiple rounds of my character getting shot, falling unconscious, and the cleric getting him up in time to keep running, he got downed and hit with another bolt. 2 failed saves. With only the cleric conscious, I rolled an 8 and died. The DM had the flame skull flee after that, and the cleric stabilized the rest of the party. The worst part is, he had almost 300 gold on his person alone. If some of his stuff was sold, he could have afforded a raise dead on his own, but no one remembered that things are cheaper in 5th edition than in Pathfinder.
Oh, no.
So, yeah, I guess let's raise a glass in memory of Gwendol Gray's character, who reminds us, you can't take it with you.
Clink.
All right, that'll do it for today. To submit questions for us to discuss, items for the Dragon's Hoard, or stories for the Funeral Pyre, please email us at interpartyconflict@gmail.com. For show notes, links to media mentioned on the show, and running lists of questions and magic items, go to interpartyconflict.com. Join the discussion on social media. You can find us on Facebook. We are on Reddit. We're on Twitter at InPartyConflict. You can find our Interparty Discord at bit.ly/InterpartyDiscord. Check those for our weekly social media questions. If you answer them, your answers might end up on the show. Check us out on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, anywhere you download podcasts. Please rate, review, subscribe, or just tell a friend. If you'd like to support the show, check out the rewards at patreon.com/interpartyconflict. We have a few different tiers, so anything you can spare, even $1 a month, would go towards making the show better, and you'll get bonus content for it. Jeff, tell us about FriendQuest.
FriendQuest is a YouTube channel where you can watch us play video games.
Yes. Speaking of video games, check out my side project, the Arcade Memories Podcast. If you'd like to submit your own childhood memories of going to the arcade, send those to me at arcadememoriespodcast@gmail.com. Also, head over to bit.ly/interpartyconflict to take a short survey about our show. What you like, what you don't like, etc. And just for taking it, you'll get 2 free printable board games, courtesy of Mary and Tom over at hollandspiel.com. And our music is made by Boxcat Games from Nameless the Hacker's RPG. So, Jeff, until next time,
You are what you eat.